Hello and welcome. These audio recordings are designed for students sitting the CIE IGCSE History exam, and we'll go over some of the more common Part C questions found on Paper 1. You might find it useful to have a pen and paper to hand, or you might just want to sit and listen through as part of your revision. That's okay too. Today we will be looking at the following question. What is the main reason for the collapse of the Soviet Union? Now, please be aware that on your real Paper 1, this question won't turn up in this format. Instead, it will have a statement followed by the question, how far do you agree? So, for example, you may get a question along the lines of, Gorbachev in Russia was a major factor for the collapse of the Soviet Union. How far do you agree? Or, solidarity in Poland was a major factor for the collapse of the Soviet Union. How far do you agree? But in the interests of being both generic and thorough, this response will follow a more holistic question. So, what is the main reason for the collapse of the Soviet Union? As with all the other audio recordings on this channel, this response will follow the PEE technique. That is to say, we will make a point, back it up with evidence, and then explain it. So, let's get started. What is the main reason for the collapse of the Soviet Union? Point 1. Solidarity. Evidence to support that solidarity in Poland was a major factor includes 1979 was the worst year for Polish industry. Standards of living were very low, and strikes followed meat price increases in July 1980. Lech Walesa became a leader of a trade union known as Solidarity. Walesa was born in 1943, the son of a farmer. He became an electrician and shipyard worker who became politically motivated, and he set up Solidarity in August 1980. Walesa was imprisoned in 1982, but went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize in 1983, and eventually, in 1989, became the first non-communist government of Poland since World War II. In a 1981 survey, 95% of Poles said they trusted Walesa, but in the same poll, only 5% said they trusted the government. So Walesa became a sort of folk hero. Walesa had made 21 demands, and the government was forced to agree to them all in August 1980. Solidarity's membership grew to 9.4 million by January 1981, which was more than a third of all the workers in Poland. Walesa was very intelligent in his negotiations, and he ensured Russia did not send in tanks like they did in Hungary in '56 by being clever in what he demanded. He also liaised closely with the Catholic Church and Pope John Paul II, who himself was a Polish Catholic. Therefore, in explaining this evidence, you may wish to argue that solidarity in Poland was a major factor in bringing about the collapse of the Soviet Union. Point 2. Gorbachev. Evidence to suggest that Gorbachev in Russia was a big factor in causing the collapse of the Soviet Union includes Mikhail Gorbachev was born in 1931. He was the grandfather of a child who famously appeared in a Pizza Hut advert after the collapse of communism, and surely nothing can suggest the huge change that took place as much as this, from communism to capitalism. But his own grandfather was a kulak, and his brother a World War II casualty. Gorbachev had studied law and became leader of the Communist Party in 1985. And Margaret Thatcher, the British Prime Minister at the time, once said she can, quote, do business, unquote, with Gorbachev. But Gorbachev introduced several policies which contributed towards the collapse of the Soviet Union, even if these were unwilling. These included glasnost, or openness. For the first time, open discussions could take place. Gorbachev also reshuffled key figures in the Politburo. For example, he got rid of Gromyko and replaced him with Shevardnadze. Another policy of Gorbachev was that of perestroika, or restructuring, which took place in 1987, and this allowed for some private market and some profit within a communist system. Moreover, Gorbachev made many speeches promoting international harmony. By 1988, he had pulled Russian forces out of Afghanistan. 15,000 Russians had been killed at a cost of $8 billion per year. And he also played the lead on US-USSR arms reductions. In 1987, Gorbachev called for relations of equality, and he ended the Brezhnev Doctrine, allowing for greater independence in Eastern European nations. And so it was in a televised speech on Christmas Day, that's the 25th of December 1991, it was Mikhail Gorbachev who announced the end of the Soviet Union. Years later, in October 1990, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And an American newspaper, the Boston Globe, wrote that his statue should stand in the center of every East European capital. Historian Steve Phillips believes Gorbachev is the main factor in causing the collapse of the Soviet Union in his book The Cold War. And so in explaining this point, you may wish to argue that glasnost, perestroika, the end of the Brezhnev Doctrine, and also a warming of relations with America were reasons that Gorbachev can be seen to be the main reason for the collapse of the Soviet Union. Point 3. President Reagan in the USA. Evidence to support Reagan's importance includes: Reagan set up the Star Wars arms program and also invested heavily in the space race program, and the Soviets kept trying to catch up, but because of this they were cash strapped, as well as because of the need for money for the war in Afghanistan. America was spending $32.6 billion on defense every year, and the USSR simply could not keep up. Reagan, an ex-Hollywood actor, famously said, quote, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," end quote, and called the Soviet Union an evil empire. His tough line was supported by the UK's Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher. Moreover, Reagan was open to talks, and he met Gorbachev for the first time in Geneva in November 1985, followed by meetings in Reykjavik in October 86, Washington in December 87, and in Moscow in June 88. Historian John Lewis Gaddis believes Reagan was the key reason, and so it could well be argued that President Reagan's spending was one of the main reasons for the collapse of the Soviet Union. Point 4. People power. Evidence to support the argument that people power across Europe was a big factor includes anti-nuclear movements gained popularity across Europe, such as the CND, or Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, as well as the PPU, the Peace Pledge Union. Nuclear arms were expensive and seen as decreasingly important after arms limitations agreements at SALT I and SALT II. After the Vietnam War, America, Chinese and Soviet relations improved, and this period was known as détente. One famous example of this was when American and Soviet cosmonauts shook hands in space. In May 1989, Hungarians began dismantling barbed wire fences, and in June 1989 free elections were held in Poland. In September 89, holidaying East Germans refused to go home, and by October 89, East Germany's Erich Honecker ordered troops to fire on strikers, but they refused to do so. In November 89, East Germans marched to the Berlin Wall. The guards threw down their weapons, and on the 3rd of October 1990, Germany became a united country again. A British newspaper, The Independent, commented, quote, "Europe is becoming once more round and whole," unquote. And so it could well be argued that it was actually the normal people, or people power across Europe, that was the main factor in bringing about the collapse of the Soviet Union. Finally, point 5. Economics. Evidence to support this include communism meant a home and a job, but did not provide an incentive to work harder. Life expectancy in the Soviet Union dropped from 67 years of age in 1964 to 62 years of age in 1980, and alcoholism was rife. Therefore, in explaining this point, you could argue that economics, and in particular the standard of living across Europe, was a big factor in bringing about the collapse of the Soviet Union. So, in answering the question, what was the main reason for the collapse of the Soviet Union, we have given a 5-point scope, including solidarity, Gorbachev, Reagan, people power, and economics and the standard of living. So now it's time for a clever conclusion. Reasons are many and often interrelated in answering this question. Whilst this essay believes it is not fair to identify one reason as being more key than the others, the irony is noted that Marx had outlined economic factors as the cause of communist revolution, and that it is hereby argued that economic factors were in fact one of the major reasons for the collapse of communism in the Soviet Union, and that economic events in the Soviet Union dictated policy. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this useful. If you did, feel free to follow me on Twitter at Mr. Guiney History, or to subscribe to my YouTube channel for further pieces of advice. Bye bye.